What if I told you? One military alliance controls more firepower than the next, several superpowers combined. Not one country, an alliance so powerful that if a single member is attacked, more than 30 nations could go to war instantly. And hidden behind diplomatic speeches is one terrifying reality. NATO was built for World War III. But here's the scary part. Most people have absolutely no idea how powerful NATO really is. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why even nuclear powers fear it. NATO stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was created in 1949, right after World War II. Europe was destroyed, millions were dead, and a new threat was rising: the Soviet Union. The West feared one thing: a Soviet invasion of Europe. So the United States, Canada, and several European nations made a deal. If one country gets attacked, everyone fights back. That single promise changed global warfare forever. This became Article 5, the most dangerous defense agreement on Earth. Article 5 sounds simple, but in reality, it could trigger global war in hours, because attacking one NATO country means fighting all of them. The United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Turkey, and many more. Together. NATO controls millions of active troops, thousands of fighter jets, massive cyber warfare systems, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and some of the deadliest special forces on Earth. But that's only the beginning. If war starts, the first thing NATO does is dominate the sky. The alliance operates over 20,000 military aircraft. That includes America's terrifying F-22 Raptors and the nearly invisible F-35 stealth fighters. Some enemy radar systems can't even detect them properly, meaning NATO could strike targets before enemies even know they're there. And then comes the bombing campaigns. Precision missiles, drone swarms, electronic warfare, satellite targeting. Entire military bases could disappear overnight. This is why many analysts believe NATO has the most advanced air force in human history. But air power alone doesn't make NATO terrifying. The real nightmare is at sea. The United States Navy alone is larger than most of the world combined. Now add Britain, France, Italy, Turkey, Canada. Suddenly, NATO becomes unstoppable across the oceans. Aircraft carriers act like floating military cities. Each one carries fighter jets, missiles, radar systems, and thousands of troops. And beneath the ocean, nuclear submarines silently patrol the darkness. Some carry ballistic missiles capable of destroying entire cities, and they can stay hidden for months. That means even if NATO were attacked first, it could still strike back, anywhere, at any time. And this leads to the most terrifying part of NATO: its nuclear weapons. 3 NATO countries possess nuclear weapons: the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. Combined, they control thousands of nuclear warheads, enough to end civilization multiple times over. And unlike the Cold War, today's nuclear systems are faster, smarter, and harder to stop. Hypersonic missiles, submarine launches, mobile launch platforms, AI-assisted targeting systems. One mistake, one miscalculation, and millions could die within minutes. This is why NATO isn't just a military alliance, it's a deterrence machine. Its goal is simple: make war look impossible. But despite all this power, NATO has weaknesses too, and its enemies know exactly where to look. NATO may look united from the outside, but internally, there are cracks. Some countries spend far less on defense, others disagree on strategy, and political divisions are growing. What happens if members refuse to cooperate during a major war? What if cyber attacks shut down communications? What if energy supplies collapse? And then there's the biggest fear of all. Would every nation really risk nuclear war to defend another member? Because Article 5 sounds powerful in theory, but in a real global conflict, everything changes. Fast. If NATO entered a full-scale war tomorrow, the battlefield wouldn't just be on land, it would happen everywhere. Modern wars are no longer fought only with bullets. They're fought with information, artificial intelligence, drones, economic collapse, and NATO has spent decades preparing for this new reality. But here's the truly terrifying part. No alliance in human history has ever possessed this much combined military power. Not the Roman Empire, not the British Empire, not even the Soviet Union. And that changes the balance of the entire world. For decades, NATO has prevented direct conflict between the world's biggest powers, not because war became impossible, but because the consequences became unthinkable. And maybe that's the real power of NATO. Not the tanks, not the jets, not the nuclear weapons, but the fear of what would happen if all of them were finally used. Because if NATO ever fights a full-scale war, the world we know today may never exist again. Subscribe for more geopolitical documentaries.